What's up, everyone? Welcome to another District Gooner Pod. I'm KP. Steven is in Vietnam, having himself a grand old time with the missus. This is episode 12. On this special episode, I'm joined by another good friend and longtime citeh supporter, Mr. Ron Reyes, who also writes rival perspective articles for the District Gooner newsletter. You can check out his piece on how to improve a treble-winning side in a transfer window on the site now. What is up, dude? Thanks for making the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Long-time listener, first-time guest.
I love that. Dude, so we usually kick off the conversation with what we saw on the pitch, and I know both clubs were in the Champions League, but maybe just before that, you can, tell the audience a little bit more about yourself. This is a global podcast, so I imagine that I'm serious, dude. We have like 20% of our listeners are from the UK, so
Okay.
I'm sure they'll be pretty fascinated by this guy from the United States who's become a City supporter, and they just like to know a little bit about that journey and what that's been like. What made you choose them? What makes you their supporter? And talk to me about that.
So, I mean, as an American, you obviously know that the Premier League didn't really start coming on to television and stuff like that until very recently. What, like 10 years ago, maybe? Maybe 10, 15 years ago? As far as, like, the mainstream, every game is being streamed and whatnot. So, like, when you get little tidbits of, European or English football, just as in general, you can attach yourself to certain teams, right? Like, the first things that come to mind as far as what got me into City is Balotelli, right? So Balotelli, I think you remember a couple of things that he had done in like 2011. First one, Bibotelli. Are you familiar with Bibotelli?
What is Bibotelli? No.
Bibotelli there's a video of him in training, and he's trying to get his training bib on, and it's taking him at least a couple of minutes. He's like, he doesn't know where the armhole or the head hole is going. He has no idea how it's fitting on. And there's like a commentary overlay. I'll send you the video. There's commentary overlay of like the people just making fun of him for like so long because he just cannot figure it out. And the other part of it is, I don't know if you ever saw him and City play against the MLS All-Stars. This was also in 2011, summer of 2011.
Is that the one where he back heels?
Yes, dude. Yes. So he gets the ball, like edge of the 6-yard box, does a little turn, back heel, misses the goal completely. Mancini's furious, pulls him off right away. Just a hilarious sight to see. But other side of it is also with FIFA. Like my brother used to play with City all the time. That Dzeko cut inside finesse shot was just unstoppable. So, I mean, you play the games, you watch the tidbits, and you start to get into it a little bit more. And, I mean, they play gorgeous football. And it's been a fantastic time, I will say, obviously, just in the last 10 years as a City supporter, for sure.
No, that's true. I think FIFA plays a big role in it, especially like just being international supporters, right? I think it's so difficult, this notion of like, well, you're not born there, so you can't like support this club, right? It's just like, well, I don't know. Like if it's my favorite club and it's one, it does depend, I think, the time that you start watching as well, right. To your point, like I remember, in the sort of late 90s and early 2000s, it was just the rivalry between sort of Manchester United and Arsenal, and just like the game that Arsenal was playing at that time. Like I'm sure that was a big key factor, like making me a supporter, but also FIFA. I think Arsenal was like the first team when you go to the English Premier League, just alphabetical. It's not, and that helps.
That's my team.
So I'm sure that helps as well. No. I hear you on all of that, man. That's cool. Obviously, the two teams are going to be playing each other at the weekend. Big game. We'll get to that at the sort of tail end of the podcast, as we usually do with our predictions and lineups, etc. But first, let's talk about sort of what we saw on the pitch. Obviously, Arsenal were in the Champions League against Lens, and
Lens.
Honestly, I texted Steven. The result did not go our way, but I texted him that he's lucky. He's lucky he's not here because the podcast was going to be a little bit spicy. I wasn't pleased with Reyes' performance. I wasn't pleased with Reese Nelson's performance. So, overall, just not great. I also wasn't pleased with the manager, as everyone else has been unpleased online with starting Saka. So I'm not going to get too much into the game. Just say it's disappointing, but it's good that the other result bailed us out a little bit in the group. So now we're sitting second. Sevilla is away at home next. Still feel like it's a tricky group because we have only Ron, I'm serious. We have only won 4 out of the last 9 away games in Europe. Okay, yes, we beat PSV 4-0 at home. Okay, yes. We still have to go there. We're going to Sevilla. So, and we saw it, and winning in Europe is hard when the stadium is buzzing the way that Lens was. I mean, wow, I was so impressed with their fans. I don't imagine you caught a lot of the game, but
I did. I watched.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, basically all of it. Yeah.
Really? Okay. What'd you think?
Well, first of all, Saka starting was hilarious to me because I remember in the last episode, both of you were like, well, he probably won't play in Europe. Like, he'll probably get a nice little rest. Did not happen. Mikel's going to run him into the ground. A lot of chances to put that game away or even to come out on top when it was equal. Couple goals should have been scored. Chances were snatched at for sure. Lens were up for it. And that's just what can happen every now and then when you're in Europe and stadium's buzzing. And yeah, to be fair, I think that's really reflective of how Europe can be as a whole. I don't think that your group is that tricky. I think that the competition is tricky, and you have the easiest of the competition, if I'm being honest. Aside from our group, because our group is way easier, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, no, I think your group is way easier. That just feels like an easy group. But that's not the first time you've gotten an easy group, to be fair. There's something going on there, maybe. But hey, yeah. I'm not going to speculate here. I'm just going to ask you what happened in the City game, because I didn't watch any of it, but I am curious. Who did you play?
We played RB Leipzig. And the game was pretty good. It was pretty good. Rodri started. And as you know, domestically, he is serving a 3-game suspension, which he will miss. The last game will be the Arsenal match, so he won't be participating in that. Return of the little bit more of control, a little bit more pausa is what Guardiola calls it. You know, it's a more controlled match, slower. We're not taking on everybody. You know, Grealish played. He's a little bit more of a retaining with winger as a whole. He doesn't necessarily take his man on as much. Of course, Doku and Alvarez both get subbed on, both electric off the bench. Doku has an assist and a goal. Alvarez has an assist and a goal. We put that game away. It's great. Rico Lewis started in the midfield, 18 years old, absolutely balled out. Had an assist for the first goal to Phil Foden. I mean, that's what dreams are made of. 2 City lads connecting for a goal in Europe, especially away. I mean, that's fantastic. And to see the subs dominate the way they did is great. I think Grealish is going to get a little bit of stick, though. There's a lot of pressure from the media. I think there's a lot of pressure from City Twitter, which is just a toxic wasteland. Football Twitter is a toxic wasteland just as a whole. But, I mean, people are calling for his head and want Doku to start. But I understand why Grealish starts for the most part, so I'm not too worried about that. Plus, he was a starter in the treble-winning side, so what can you really say?
That's interesting to hear. I didn't know that was happening to him, and I guess it's so strange because when he had first signed, I feel like everyone was saying why he's not playing, right? And it was just like, oh, it's so hard to get into a Guardiola side and all this stuff, and he has to learn all these things. And then you sign a new winger, and everyone's like, no, switch to winger. So it just shows how quickly people can change and flip on you.
They're fickle.
So, yeah. Oh my gosh. And in today's world, I think just like focus is so hard.
hey, let's bring about some context. Let's not just react to everything that's going on.
It is a very reactive world, man. Speaking of reactions, let's take things off the pitch a little bit before we get into the game at the weekend. Your manager made some headlines. I would call them maybe a little reactionary, because it sounded like in a pre-match, was this, or was it after the match against Wolves? I think there was this notion of the Korean guy, which is just, it's fun for the social admins because they're so quick to jump on that and take advantage of it. But then some of the news headlines, I'm curious what you have to comment on that in any way.
I mean, I thought that it was fine. Guardiola's talking and giving praise to the players that they have on the transition. That's something that we've talked about against Leipzig for the many years that we faced them. Because we faced them, it feels like, every year in the group or in the knockout. Like, it happened last year. They hit us on the break. He likes to comment. Sorry, I'm talking about Leipzig here, but we're talking about transitionary players just generally, right? So when we're talking about Wolves as a whole, they're also very much a transition side. They can get you in the transitions. They're very fast, just generally. Like Neto on the wing, they have Hwang Hee-chan, the Korean guy. I mean, it's a bad look. It's a bad look. All's fair. It's not a great look. I understand why he and the Wolves supporters would have been a little bit frustrated at that. And of course, he gets the goal that puts them ahead. I will say, that man should have been sent off in the first half. I don't know if you've seen any replays. There's not been a whole lot of replays, just generally. He was on a yellow, takes out Walker, sliding challenge, similar to the Jota challenge, actually, that got him sent off. And he lays down on the floor, and you can see it in his face. He's like, oh, I'm in trouble here. And you could totally tell that he's just not... he thinks he's coming off. Referee swallows his whistle, swallows his cards, doesn't call it. Happens the way it happens. Of course he scores the winner. That's just football. That's the way things are scripted. That's just how it is, especially after Guardiola really put his foot in his mouth. I don't think it was malicious by any means. I think it's just... Honestly, my thought is he didn't want to get the name wrong. Because it would be so much worse, right? I think it'd be so much worse if you got the name wrong. What do you think?
So, I think in today's world, there's so much sensitivity around these things as well. Going back to it just being a very reactionary world. And it's just such a click-chasing culture and society that we're in right now. The moment that our society is in, not the society that we're in. But for him... The one place where I think I'd maybe give him a little bit of a slack is because he had the whole surgery and everything, so he's been a little bit away from everything.
He's on meds.
So he's on meds probably. He's not necessarily in his top shape that we're kind of used to. And also, it's hard because you want to be praising the other team. To your point, he is going out of his way to kind of pay the respect. Now he misses the mark a little bit, right? But okay, fun little headlines. I appreciate you at least commenting on it. This is not a political pod by any means, but
gotcha. You're finished.
Yeah, now here comes the quiz, baby. No, dude. So, hey, the other big thing that's kind of still a huge storyline in the world of football is should Liverpool and Spurs replay? Obviously, we just got the PGMOL audio, and I think that there's this huge conversation about, things went wrong, and maybe Klopp is asking for a replay, and rightfully so. To me, it feels like that's a right thing to ask for. I don't know if the league will give them that because of just how the other perspectives have been coming up. But I want to hear some of your thoughts on this big story, and then I still have a few things to add to it.
Look, Klopp he likes to talk about referees' decisions. I will say that, right? Like, managers as a whole, they talk about referees' decisions all the time. You think of Mourinho, you think of Guardiola and certain decisions. He does it a lot more on the pitch, I would say. And then afterwards, he dismisses it very much passive-aggressively, but he dismisses it. I think Klopp does get into it a little bit more as far as the complaining at times when things don't go his way. I would be asking for a replay. So with that caveat, I would also be asking for a replay if I was in Klopp's shoes. Is that ever going to happen? And do I actually think it should happen? No, I really don't. Because it sets a crazy precedent, right? Like, we talk about VAR and whether people think it should be in the game or it shouldn't be in the game. VAR messed this up, it should be a clear goal, blah, 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 just chalk it off, whatever it is. But at the same time, it was called offside on the pitch, right? If VAR is not present, it's still not a goal. So yes, they should have gotten it right. They should have had the conversation, and they should have clarified. I think that there's a lot that needs to be done as far as the VAR side, as far as making sure that the language is clear. Because if you listen to the audio, it's very jumbled and kind of all over the place. I don't think that they should get a replay. Decisions go wrong all of the time for every single team. If they did that, not only would, the work that Spurs put in to that match be completely chalked off just because of a wrongful decision, it would be hard. It would be doing hard the players on either side, I think. If a decision goes one way, okay, we have to replay the match again. That doesn't seem like a realistic way forward.
No, it maybe doesn't. I think what it comes down to for me is three things. So one, I want to understand the Liverpool side, which is, look, it's the 32nd minute. You're already down to 10 men, but that goal puts you in front. That's the first goal of the game. That gets you 1-0. You can win that game with 10 men. You can go into your low block, and you can probably see that game out, because 2 minutes after that is when you actually, get scored on. So I understand that the decision really changed what could have been the outcome of the game, because we also saw that Spurs couldn't even score against 9-men Liverpool, right? So I understand how you feel hard done there. The second thing for me is just the VAR in general. We talked about it on the last pod, the lack of what is the standard operating process here? Can you just tell me this? Because what I also don't understand, since they have released the audio, I don't even understand the chain of command in VAR. Because the person, Ollie, that they say, Ollie's saying delay the game. Ollie's saying delay the game. And this person, his title, their official title is VAR Hub Operations Executive. That, to me, sounds like one of the highest people in VAR, right? At the PGMOL. He is the VAR Hub Operations Executive. That person is calling in and saying, delay the game, there's been a mistake.
Right.
Delay the game. And the VAR referee thinks they have a higher authority than this person to say, can't do anything now, it's done.
Right.
I'm making the call ahead of you. And they keep telling, Ollie's saying delay the game. So what is the chain of command here? That's my sort of second issue or perspective. And the third thing, why I don't think there will be a replay, is yes, they made a mistake, but we all notice now, because this is the very first audio that has been released, there has been a lot of decisions in the past, and we don't know the audio for those. So
there was audio released for the Onana non-penalty call against Wolves, the first match. Did you ever listen to that?
I didn't, but I was actually talking about seasons past. Too.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I was just thinking in seasons past, you would people would be so hard done of release my audio, right? Replay that game. So that's my perspective of this is one of the very first major audios. I didn't hear the Onana one. What was that one like?
So it is. There have been a lot of questions about it, because I don't know if you remember the situation itself.
Yes.
It was.
That was a terrible foul when he came out for that cross.
He clatters into him, right? And so the referees are essentially saying like, oh, it happened like after the fact, or like, they justified it. And so the audio is released, and people are very much in the camp of like, that is a dumb decision regardless, right? Like, I can hear the audio, I understand the thought process, but the thought process is ridiculous. So I think the audio should be released. I think that's my view on it. It should be playing as the decisions are being made. So that way the referees have that transparency. So that way the fans have that transparency. They understand what goes into making these decisions. And I think the referees will slow themselves down a little bit to get the decisions right, especially when it's close. I mean, you brought up the Romero handball last episode and how long it took for that, and that seems ridiculous. So I would like to hear the audio on a more consistent basis to see how these decisions are being made and to keep them accountable, and not just when, something goes horribly wrong, right? Because, football fans are very much conspiracy theorists in a lot of ways, and I think it would be best to kind of limit that just as a whole.
That's totally fair, dude. That's totally fair. I agree with you. And I think just a final point to touch on off the pitch is also United related, who played in the Champions League midweek. It was actually the one result on the day that made me feel so much better. Obviously, Arsenal had just lost, and I opened up ESPN app, and I go into the Champions League results, and I see this, and I'm like, wow, how funny, dude.
It's so good. And Zaha scored the first goal against them, so that's even funnier. Came from their academy. That's hilarious. Also, Onana is just not showing that he is a top keeper in the Premier League or in Europe. I mean, for Inter, he played so well in the Champions League final. As you know, City beat them in the Champions League final, so it didn't do that great. But he had a wonderful match. His distribution was fantastic. So I don't know what's going on in the United camp. Ten Hag has been having a mare this season. Onana, Antony, all these players that have played for him in the past that he has signed, I don't know. They don't seem to be working out too well, I would say.
No, and it's so funny.
Yeah, so good.
It's great to watch, dude. It's your turn. Well, I mean, it's been their turn for a while, and it's sad. It's sad, and yeah, they're just getting it wrong. There's so much wrong over there, and I don't know. So which is another reason. It's like, Neville, man, come on, bro, come outside, bro. So say all this stuff with your chest, bro.
What's funny is about that for me is that Glazer's out. Like these men have put in so much money or have spent so much money for the club. Like, I understand the Glazers out perspective in a lot of ways, but spending money is not the reason why they're not successful at the moment, right? Like, United have been on par with Chelsea and with City as far as their spending, so it's just hilarious, the uproar at the owners and things like that, pointing that in that direction when it's like, they're investing a significant amount into the club, and obviously they're not putting as much of their own money into it, but they seem willing to spend. So that is just funny to me.
Yeah, I think if I were to, see it a little bit more from a footballing fan's perspective, that's where the annoyance comes of, yes, they're spending a lot, but it seems to be very marketing focused spending. It's focused on jersey sales. It's a revenue generating investment that they keep making, and not so much a footballing investment. Sure. And that's where the frustration is really coming from. So I'll give them that. All right, man. Well, let's take a little break. Well, let's start to look ahead to game week 8 in the Premier League. Obviously, match of the weekend, Arsenal will play Manchester City Sunday. at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time here in the district. And after that, it's the international break. So all eyes, I think, will be on this one. It's very exciting. How are you feeling going into it?
I'd be feeling a lot better if Rodri was playing, but he is not. And this is a pivotal game. Right before the international break, you have... I don't think it's as much of a problem for the players as much it is as a problem for the supporters, right? You lose a tough match before the international break. You have 2 weeks to think about it. That's a tough deal. And sometimes I think that can be reflected in the squad morale. But, I guess we'll see.
Wow, yeah, no, that's a very relatable feeling.
I'm sure it is for you.
So, we'll see. Not these days. Not these days, hopefully. I'm very excited about this one. I'm a little bit worried, obviously, like every Arsenal fan, supporter, because Bukayo is just such a question mark.
Yeah.
He just became, actually, the first player in Europe's Big 5 leagues to score 5+ goals and register 5+ assists in all competitions. So he was on a heater, but also, obviously, your squad is making its own headlines in the stats. I was looking at the stat leaders after the 7 weeks that have been played, and most goals scored are held by Haaland. Most shots attempted are held by Haaland.
Yes,
most expected goals are held by Haaland. And the most clean sheets are held by Ederson. So that's good for you, I suppose, but also kind of expected.
Yeah.
Haaland is a player that worries me a little bit at home, especially because we've just been a little shaky with the goals at home. So I'm not necessarily looking forward to that matchup. What about you?
Haaland's a tricky one. Obviously, he's a robot. He's incredible. He finishes a goal out of nowhere. But in the first, 10 matches, just as a whole, he has not been on it. He has scored a lot of goals, and it's reflected in his expected goals as well. I think when you see it in line 7.94 xG with 8 goals scored, you're scoring every chance that you're expected to score, essentially, right? But I think last season, I believe his expected goals was a few under his actual goals scored. So he outperformed his XG last year. And that's not something that has been reflected as much in his most recent performances, especially. He had a hat trick against Fulham, so that obviously kind of tips the scale a little bit in terms of his goals scored just as a whole. But in the last few matches, unfortunately, I haven't been super impressed with his finishing lately. It has felt like he's a little bit off it. I believe he scored, he scored a goal recently, and you could tell that after he scored it, he was just like, thank God, and that's something that we haven't necessarily seen from
That was against Sheffield United.
Was it?
I think so.
I think I'm talking about the Forest goal. Yes, it is actually the Forest goal that I'm talking about, because that was his most recent goal scored. Because he... I
don't know. I don't watch your games.
Yeah, that's okay. Some people aren't supporters.
They put me to bed sometimes, to be honest, man. But no, sorry. Go on.
No, he's doing well. He's finishing the chances off for the most part. But it's some of those half chances that goes begging. Some of the ones that you'd expect him to finish being like the most lethal number 9 in the world at the moment. I think that it's just a little bit of a baby slump just as a whole. He'll get back. I don't have any worries. If he scores a hat trick at the weekend, I won't be surprised, and I don't think anyone would be surprised. So that's the lethality that he provides. With Alvarez, you talked about your star boy having 10 goal involvements, 5 and 5, which is fantastic. Alvarez also has 10 goal involvements in his 10 matches played. He has 6 goals and 4 assists. So, if he had one more assist, it would have been a little bit better. But, it is what it is. He has been playing super well. now that Kevin, unfortunately, is out until probably the beginning of the new year. He stepped into that Kevin De Bruyne role. He's been playing fantastic. He had a really wonderful goal in midweek against Leipzig. So them two together, there will be goals, and I'm very excited.
Okay, yeah, I think there will be one goal because I think we will win the game 4-1, as I mentioned on the last pod. But because one you'll get, but Saliba and Gabriel are both fit, and I expect both of them to play. I think that last season we really suffered without Saliba in a couple of the matchups against City.
Mm-hmm.
So having him, and not so much just his physicality and defensively, he really helps us with our way of trying to control the game. So and some of his passing is he has a really nice passing range that's super helpful.
Gets you out of trouble a lot.
It does. So we'll see. I'm really looking forward to the Haaland and Gabriel matchup. I think last time we played, he tries to target Gabriel a little bit more than Saliba. So
yeah.
I'm curious what you think about our two defenders.
Well, I will say that last season at the Emirates, Gabriel and Saliba did just play. I don't know if you saw me looking that up. They did both play when we beat you 3-1. I think that game was a lot closer than the scoreline suggested. The 4-1 game at the Etihad was obviously way worse, but I think that Haaland will be fine. He does like a physical battle, and I know that Gabriel is definitely up for it as well, so that's always fun to see, especially when it starts chippy at the very beginning. I think Haaland is almost offended when people try to like manhandle and bully him the way that center backs try to do. Doesn't always work out for them just as a whole. So I'm very much looking forward to how that's going to play out. Saliba is maybe the second best center back in the Premier League, I would say. I think Ruben Diaz clears. That's just me. I mean, he's a treble-winning center back. He's incredible. He's never lost a Premier League. So, I mean, that goes into it just as a whole as well. He's an absolute leader, absolute fridge of a man. And Saliba is really good, and I think that his passing range does get you out of a lot of trouble. The ability to play from the back and be as silky as they are, because I mean Gabriel is very good, but I don't think that his passing range is as wide as Saliba's is.
Sure, no, I would agree with that. Just the last comment, not anything else that you said, just the last comment about Gabriel's passing range. I would agree.
Yes.
I would agree with that. But the game, I think the 3-1 that you bring up, that was the first time we played in the league last season, and excuse me, and that's when Tomiyasu made a mistake, and he had a bad pass back that was capitalized on by a player who will be missed at the weekend, Kevin De Bruyne, who I'm just going to put my hands up and say loves a good goal against Arsenal.
Yes, he does.
So I feel advantage us, not having him, not having Rodri, both those two players that I've always felt like are so critical to your success are out of the center, and that feels like a huge advantage to me.
Yeah, that is by far, for me, the bigger miss between the two. I love Kevin De Bruyne. I will never back down from saying that he's probably the best midfielder the Premier League has ever seen. At least he's a good shout, top three at least. But Rodri in this team makes it tick. He knows the ability to stop the ball, play the ball, knows how to read and intercept the ball. I mean, he has everything in his locker. He scores goals. You remember that winner at, I think it was the Emirates.
I do.
It was super late. You guys should have won that match, I will say that. And that was a really tough match, but he loves it. He loves it there. And so I think he'll be a big miss. And I have a lot of questions about what's going to happen in the middle of the park for us, because there's plenty of options for sure, but none that really fit the Rodri role as well as Rodri does himself. And Gundogan has gone. If Gundo was still back there, I would totally be safe and comfortable, but we just don't have him anymore, so that's a little bit tough of a miss.
Sure. And sorry, in the middle of the park is where we've brought in 2 new players. That is going to be the first time they're going to be playing against Manchester City in an Arsenal kit. And I'm really looking forward to seeing their performances. For me, both of them start, Declan Rice and Kai Havertz. And I know that on the other side, you've also brought in a few new players, but I haven't really watched them at all. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about them for our listeners.
So let's start in the middle of the park because that's where we started at first. Nunez from Wolves, Kovacic from Chelsea. Obviously, they were the 2 midfield signings that we made before the end of the window. Both of them have very much a different profile than a holding midfielder, right? Kovacic does play a little bit deeper, as you've seen in the Chelsea sides as well. He does like to carry the ball forward for sure. But that is the biggest difference between Rodri and Nunez and Kovacic. I do believe they are a little bit more focused on carrying the ball, driving the ball forward, as opposed to Rodri's a little bit more comfortable with being the metronome. He will carry it forward when he sees it necessary, but I think that might be one of the first instinctual reactions from a Nunez or from a Kovacic just as a whole. Another piece that could fit for the first time this season is we could see John Stones in the middle of the park. As you know, he played in the midfield, coming from the right back in the Champions League final. He had been doing that also towards the end of the season. It wasn't just something that Pep cooked up for the last day, as he likes to do, and it's a little bit nerve-wracking. But Stones is an absolute force in the middle of the park. I think he knows how to read the game and be physical and also play the metronome type passes that Rodri is able to do. I do see him struggling a little bit more going forward, but if he is fit and able to start in the middle of the park, I would feel a lot better overall than playing Nunez and Kovacic at the same time. Another shout is Bernardo obviously could start in the middle too, because he's disgusting. He's so good. He knows how to play the game. He knows how to play Pep's system. And I see personally Bernardo starting in the midfield with one of Kovacic or Nunez.
Bernardo does tend to show out, so I will call him out. Hey, let's talk lineup. I know we've kind of touched on some of the players and whatnot, but for me, for the Arsenal, the 11 I want to see is going to be Ramsdale in goal.
Spicy.
I want to see Ramsdale in goal, and
I've seen enough.
I will say more about that on the pod if it happens. Right? That's my lineup. Do I think he will play? I'm not sure, but for me, he plays. I feel like we really cannot afford a mistake against City, especially early on, and hopefully he'll be locked in for it. So Ramsdale plays, Ben White, right back, Saliba, Gabriel, Zinchenko, Rice, Havertz, Odegaard, Trossard, Jesus. If Saka is fit, Saka plays. If Saka isn't fit, Trossard plays on the right, Smith Rowe plays on the left.
Wow, that's a big shout.
That's
a huge
lineup, dude. How do you feel about yours?
Gets no love, huh?
Smith Rowe gets a shout out on the wing.
That'd be big. Yeah, I would be interested to see who starts in goal. I think against a team like City, I do think that you need a better passing presence, just in terms of how they want to be able to possess the ball, keep the ball, be a little bit calmer and composure. But obviously, he made the mistake in the Lens goal as well, so that led to a goal. But I'm interested to see what that looks like.
If you want me to, just to comment on it, he made, it's not because of just that mistake. It's because he had a tough time with long passing against Tottenham, and then this game. So 2 big games, he's underperformed expectations. So for that reason, he goes out.
Sure. For that reason, I am out. Yes. I mean, we'll see. Maybe the lights are a little bit too bright. He's too used to Brentford, maybe a little bit more low stakes just as a whole. Ramsdale does, I think, play well generally in a lot of big games. So he's always good for a save, so I guess we'll see. I believe the last, when we're talking about 3-1, he was doing really, really well. He just got unlucky on a few of those. The Jack Grealish goal, I remember, took a deflection before it went in past him. And
he saved the one-on-one, I believe, with Haaland. He's very good at one-on-ones.
Yeah, so, he's super good.
Anyways, what's your lineup?
In goal, obviously no changes there. Ederson. Ortega hasn't really had a sniff that much this year. Ederson's been in great form, so I'm happy to see that. On the left side, I'm not sure on which way it's going to be, but I do want it to be Ake and Guardiola. So I'm not sure if Guardiola will stay on the left and Ake will be at the center back, or if they're switched. I know that Ake has had some joy against Saka in the past, so we'll see how that goes just generally. It'll be Ruben alongside either Ake or Guardiola at center back, Walker on the right back. For me, the midfield is going to be Kovacic and Bernardo as kind of like a double pivot with Alvarez in front of them. I'm going to go Grealish on the left wing to start. I think that Doku would be a very, very big impact substitution. I think the way that Guardiola sees it, especially when we're playing away, is he wants to control the match for as long as we possibly can. And now that we have some dynamism off the wing that we can bring off the bench, I think Doku goes in. Ben White's going to be tired at that point. I could see him, sending him for a hot dog or something like that. But yeah, I think it'll be Grealish to start, a little bit more control at the beginning. Haaland obviously up top, and then I think it'll be Foden on the right. Obviously, the positions kind of go in and out. Bernardo can be on the right. Foden can be more in the center. We've seen different formations and different kind of phases of play for this City side that we didn't see as much last season. So I'm really interested to see what that's going to look like.
Okay. All right. We'll see. We'll see. Interesting. So Stones didn't get into your midfield, no?
No, because the only reason that I didn't include Stones is because he hasn't played a match yet. I thought he might have gotten a substitution against Leipzig, but he did not get on the pitch. If he had made like a 10-minute cameo or something like that, I'd feel a little bit more comfortable with that. In an ideal world, he's perfectly fit. He's in my midfield 1,000%. I just think realistically, it will be more Kovacic, where he is playing a little bit deeper with Bernardo slightly in front of him, but to the side of him. I guess we'll see how that goes. I don't think Stones will be able to even play full 90 if he gets on. So I can see him being a substitution, especially if we have a lead at some point.
Got it. All right. Well, my score prediction, obviously, so I want to hear yours.
It's a tough one. I'm not as optimistic, unfortunately, going into this match, and that is solely because Rodri's out. I do still think that we'll squeak out a win. I do think that we'll concede, though. So I believe it's going to be a 2-1. I think that we will score first. I think that Arsenal will score second. And I think that we'll score late. That 4-1, honestly, isn't as crazy as it would be in years past, especially with Rodri being out. So I'm not as optimistic for this match. I'm a little bit more realistic going into it, but I still think that we can squeak out a 2-1.
Okay. We'll see. I really think that this is it. We have to win. As I've said, this is a must-win for me. I'm looking here at the history of just the last 5 matches that we've had, and it's a 2-1 loss, it's a 1-0 loss, it's a 3-1 loss, it's a 4-1 loss, and I finally it gets a 1-1, which I know the Community Shield, it goes to penalties, but there's not going to be penalties. That's the beauty of this game, right? That's the beauty of this league. It ends at 90, so I want to really have a statement game here. So maybe the tape has slightly flipped and in our players' minds, and it would be such a huge win mentally and make it a very, very, very fun season.
Absolutely. I will say, and this is not to be a jerk by any means, when you look at that Arsenal 4-1, right, the last game of that season that we played against you guys, that was as demoralizing as it could be as far as the performance was. And that's not me trying to step on the head or anything like that. It just didn't feel like they were there to play. Like City had their way. It was a pretty easy day at the park for them just generally. I think that Arsenal needs this a lot more than I think City needs this. I think that if City loses, they can chalk it off to we're not playing our best football, we're not playing with our best lineup, we'll survive, we can win all the other games and we'll be okay. I think that mentally it is so much more important for Arsenal to win this match, because if you don't and you have 2 weeks to think about it, not a lot of bounce back time. If there was a midweek game, perhaps you bounce back a little bit quicker, but if there is a loss on the cards, I do worry about what that does for the mentality of this young squad and going into another long title race again. So I'm very interested to see how that goes. Just hold on to your seats.
It's a test. It's always a test, and they take them one at a time. So we'll see. Hey, we usually like to end by just going around the league to see if there's any good matches. Are there other matches that you think you're going to watch? Obviously, one match is our call usually. And yeah, if you have any predictions around the league. So I'm kind of looking around here. Saturday does not look like a day that I'm going to be spending watching football.
Saturday looks terrible. Burnley Chelsea.
I'll catch up on the Bants in the afternoon,
Yeah. Sunday looks like an absolute cracker. Even the worst match of the week or of the day, which is Wolves versus Villa, will be a very spicy match, I think. I think that'll be a nice game. For me, it has to be Brighton-Liverpool as my one to watch. West Ham-Newcastle obviously is going to be fantastic, but, Liverpool coming off of this hard-done results, Brighton being who they are, I think it'll be a very open, a very fun game. I think there will be goals. I'm very pumped for that one.
That's a good shout. Yeah, Sunday. Wow, dude. We'll see. I think the Wolves and Villa game could be fun. But also, Newcastle just had their Champions League opener against PSG, and I imagine that scoreline is going to be... actually, West Ham are hosting, so...
Yeah. If it was at St. James Park, I'd be like, okay, that's a win, automatic.
That would be fun to tune in just for the atmosphere, I do like the atmosphere, even Lons. I'm not gonna not say that about supporters. I love when they show out like that, dude. I love it, and I'm hoping that the weekend our fans are really up for it. And if Waka starts going around and Kai gets on the score sheet, I don't know, man. We'll see.
Yeah, give him another little penalty to just have.
We'll see. But for me, I agree. Liverpool game, I'll probably tune in for that. But
prediction for that game?
Oh, Brighton just got hammered, didn't they?
Yeah.
But Liverpool are going to be pissed off. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I think Liverpool win 1-0.
Okay, 1-0. That's a big shout. I will say, for me, I think it's going to end in a 2-2. And I want to say 3-3, just because I think it'll be fun. I think that there will be plenty of goals. I'm looking back at the last time Brighton got smashed and it was the West Ham game when they went up 3-0 against Brighton. They actually brought a goal back. It was 3-1. And then they came back and played Newcastle the next match, and they won 3-1. So I think Brighton has it in them to be able to bounce back. I think that Zerbi is a really quality manager. I can see a 2-2 or a 3-3. Does Liverpool even have any players? Are all of them suspended with their red cards? I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Sure. We will. All right, man. Well, I will probably be texting you on Sunday, and you'll be back on the pod to talk about how the game unfolds, and we'll put this one out for everyone. So, hey, did you have a good time?
I had a great time. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, dude. Hey, with that, I just want to thank everyone for spending time with us. If you like the podcast, please rate and leave a review. Also share it on social media. It's the best way for others to find out about us. With that, Ron, see you at the weekend.
See you later.